Yeah. So this whole design premise about like our cities, and there's been a lot of questions that people ask me. Why is it that certain cities have got certain characteristics, and then as architects, how is it that we impact our cities? So this lecture actually more or less is trying to reveal to you what happens in your built environment, and how is it that there's a relationship between us and how we perceive our cities. So this lecture should help young designers to understand our the cause and effect of what we do, and how we did that cities appeal to us in very specific ways. So next slide, Yusra. Oh, it's going on a scroll. Okay, so you have read the synopsis. Basically, if I just look at the gist of what we're doing here is, I think we all have different ideas about what we think architecture is. So through this lecture, I think feel free to make your own judgment. But the aim of this lecture is actually to allow everyone an opportunity to understand my personal perspective. So the reason why I put this together is because we're starting a project which is very site specific, and what I want to show is that whatever we do, right, we're only a part of a bigger whole, which is that eventually you see that history shows us that we come into a city where there's not just one architect, there are like several hundreds of years of architecture that eventually develop into what it is. So we live in a city which is a record of traces of many different architects working together, and the result of how we feel about our own cities is our own consciousness. We are the ones who actually manifest the city that we live in. That's the whole point about this lecture. So that's the synopsis. Next slide, Yusra. Okay, so I think cities are not dead. They are not like static. So I say that cities are unfolding. It means that as and when you have many, at any point in time right now, like you look at any city or anywhere you go, right, construction is going on at different paces. Someone is let's say you are in a house at the moment and someone is extending your kitchen. That extension alone is part of unfolding. The city is unfolding in a very small way, behind your backyard. And then another person is like taking off 400 or 500 square feet of lawn somewhere in his garden. Another guy is putting bulldozing a highway or road bridge. So when I talk about unfolding, basically you understand that there's a lot of damage, but there's also good things that are happening all at the same time. I think our role is to allow, different forms of expression anywhere and everywhere in our city. What we consider to be heritage is something that you earn and you get out of the result of your own administration. The mayor that you appointed, the governor, and all those people who work in planning office, they are appointed as a result of your own appointment, right? So we also allow a lot of developers to get away with it, so to speak, and what I'm proposing here is that everything that you see is actually out of our own responsibility. But always remember that it's unfolding, meaning that our intelligence, our conscious will allow a city to grow in the direction that we want it to grow. You elect a certain mayor, you work with a certain client, you agree to make a certain type of design, you work with certain consultants, you consult certain people. So everything is manifested as a result of your own doing. And therefore the city keeps unfolding one day after another. It unfolds and it unfolds. So the idea of unfolding is that the word unfold actually comes from Christopher Alexander's book. It talks about that unfolding is like you always learn more, and the city reveals itself more and more and more. So this is the term that Christopher Alexander uses when he describes cities and communities. Next one, Yusra. Thank you. Isra, next slide. Yeah. And all of this writing is for you to, read in your own time. I think there's a lot of the things that we do, right, is awareness. I think a lot of us are not waking up to the idea that everything you do will have an impact to the city. So I've written like 3 pages of this thing called Cities Must Unfold. As you read it, you find out that it's a continuum, it's continuous, it doesn't stop. If you build something today, let's say you extend your dad's backyard, that thing will stay forever and ever. It's kind of, and then someone else will come along and then add something else. And the same thing that goes with shopping malls and people who renovate cafes. So I think it is a continuum. That the cities don't have a start and an end. It's a continuum. It is like a moving and living thing. Next page. Next slide. Let's go to the next one. The next slide. Okay, so the blue planet. Why do I put this slide on? Is because a lot of people think that they have different sites. Let's say who's in the meeting now, Iris or Noah, and Wei Ling. They are doing things, and you think you're working on a site A, and then Noah is working on another project, and then I'm working on another project. But what we often forget as designers, right? We've only got one building site. It's called the planet, isn't it? So this is what I mean by cities. Actually, all our cities are part of another city called our cities. So it's like the planet is just one place that everyone's going to impact. So as long as you remember that, right, you just have to remember to do the right things, because whatever you do, right, Noah or Wei Ling, right, it's going to impact someone in Norway who's trying very hard to preserve, let's say, conserve a forest somewhere, and then another guy who burn the forest in Indonesia, and then another guy that hacked the trees out in Brazil, and then someone else is trying to fix the contamination of their rivers in Hudson Bay or something, and at the same time someone is throwing poison from I wouldn't say a pig farm, let's say that a farm, and all the toxins goes into our fresh rivers, right? So it's the one planet mindset that we do not have. We think we all live in different planets. You got one, I got one, everyone's got a different planet. That's not true. So this is something that I want you all to remember. Okay, next one. Yusra.
Yeah.
So everything is to do with our. So in other words, I'm looking for someone to understand this lecture. Is to say that when you do something, as long as you are aware that your city is a result of your own action, you don't go around complaining and say I'm good at that. I complain and say our city council chop trees here, left, right, and center, and then we kind of burn our forests because we want to put up another condominium. I'm guilty of saying all those things, right? But actually, it's my own doing. I'm the one who allowed it. So I think our consciousness plays a very big role when we design something. Even if you pick the right timber, someone was telling me that I think it was Yong. Yong said he loves timber and he wants to use timber, and I asked him why you want to use timber. So it's all boils down to why you're doing certain things. It relates to you. It's a question that you should ask yourself instead of asking me. So I think self-consciousness and awareness is part of making the planet a better place to be in. So that activity is very, very much to do with the thoughts that you have in your mind, the kind of mindset that you have when you design is very important. Okay, next one. I will try to run this quickly. Next one, Yusra. So Christopher Lander is one of those people that tried to put into some kind of regimented or methodological manner in which you can kind of do great architecture and design great cities, and but at the end of the day, right, you can read all these books and you can have as many voluminous writing on architecture, right? But if you are sitting there and you decided to use a marble for your living room, right, you already you've already kind of manifest part of the evolution of your city, meaning one person decides to buy Italian marble for a house in Bukit Antarabangsa, let's say, then that's already one responsibility. Someone raised his hand. Any questions there? Go ahead. I saw someone raise his hand. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, someone raised his hand. Go ahead. Anything? No, huh? Okay.
What? Just one more thing. There might be some lagging between us. So when you say next, it might be a bit slow. I mean, like because there's lagging a bit when I switch the slides. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe few seconds.
Okay, next slide, Yusra. I will go slowly now. You know, I have this philosophy that sometimes the less I talk, the easier it's people to understand what I'm talking about. You know, you look at this image, right? In how many years is that? Like in less than 50 years, or 50 over years, you can see what happens to Dubai. Why is it that it became that way? Because who do you think built those things? Is it insects or a bunch of butterflies or a couple of birds decided that the city should look like that? No, right? It's you and me, right? So basically, we build the cities that we want, and the title of the slide says the conscious city means the city is conscious, you know, and the city is comes alive and it looks the way it does because of us, because we are the city actually. I mean that's quite a nice, interesting thought, right? If someone says, "Where's the soul of the city?" You and me, like, you know, we are the soul of the city. So we give it the transformation that you see today, you know. Next slide, Yusra. So we have been surrounded by social media, and the thing that I'm not against is social media and digital devices. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's a lot of data that you need to process. We are always caught up with like data. You know, I mean, I don't mind data, but you know, sometimes data is something that is quite useless. You know, on its own. You know, you have to like always rely on data, and I think this is the problem that we have, that there's too much information that you don't really need. You know, you actually don't need as much data as you imagine you need. That is something that I just want to share in this lecture. Next slide. So the city is very anxious, not because of architectural design. You know, when you say the city is anxious, it's because of us. We are the ones who are like, when the city is anxious, it's like, oh, we got traffic jams. Oh, we're gonna be late for the meeting. Oh, I haven't paid my phone bill, you know. All the anxiety comes from us, actually. Next one. This is another one that talks about, like, you know, I wanted to do an experiment later after the lecture. Maybe we can do a very small exercise where you take a photograph of a city that you like, and then you just do photoshopping, you know, you just remove all the clutter, you know. One of the things that makes a good city to me is when you can actually do all the things that I put up on the slide here. You can say like, what about if we say, forget about high density? You know, why do we want to make city so dense? You know, you have to find out why is it that we need to do that. Because someone decided to make a lot of money. You know, it's a very simple point. You know, someone just need to make a lot of money. That's it. You know, like social housing is not about high density actually. One of my favorite things that I like to share with people, like designers, is signage is one of my favorite, or my what do you call that, a vocation. The top of the statue of David's head, it says eliminate wasteful signage. I think we got way too much signage. You know, when you drive from, let's say, from Kuala Lumpur to Seremban, if you count the number of signage you have to see, it's probably like you end up something like 11,000. You know, by the time you reach your destination. But for the same distance, I can promise you, right, if you drive from Kuala Lumpur to Seremban, you take that distance, which I know to be about 70 kilometers or maybe 100 kilometers. If you take that and you put it in France, somewhere in the middle of France, the number of signages that you will see is about 11 to 30, you know, in a specific part of France. I mean, I'm just saying there is a huge contrast between the amount of signages that Asians use opposed to some of the Western countries. I'm not putting anyone down here. It is just relative, you know. You need to figure out why is it that we need so much signage, you know. That's something that's very, very important that we all have to learn to reduce, is to put blinking lights and signages that we don't really need, actually. You know, you go into a building, for example, you put there turn left for a toilet, and after that male, female is okay lah. But you don't put there, you know, M&E room, column, beams. This is the ceiling. You'll be surprised, right? You know, this is the floor, this is the table, this is the chair. There's too many signage, and I think this is not very resourceful. Yeah. Can you guys mute? Okay, next one, Yusra. I'm getting a lot of echo. Yeah, next one, please. So what we have to do, we have to work with the government. We have to be cooperative, and we need to understand an agenda. For those of you who are looking up the Nobel Peace Prize, this year's nomination, you all are aware, right? Our young friend Greta Thunberg is one of the nominees, you know, nominated for Nobel Peace Prize. What I mean by trust is that, you know, there's certain people that you need to trust, you know, to build a good city. If Greta Thunberg is interested to reduce carbon footprint, and then someone else wants to build a wall in Mexico, you need to figure out who's the one that you need to work with, you know. Next one. So one of the things that a lot of people fail to realize is that yesterday, I think Iris and who was it? Helen shared with me that you all had a class called Building Science, and it is to do with how architects should relate to daylight. And then there was a picture which I saw, which is an invention, you know. It's called a light tube. What a light tube does is not to use battery and then you connect it to a power supply and then you bring light into a basement. The light tube actually is daylight. It's called daylight tube. You know, daylight tube is like a bypass. You know, let's say your lung is not getting enough oxygen, so I have to send you to a surgeon who will put a tube into your body so that you can get a bypass, or you know it's because you are sick lah. So a light tube should only be used when, for some reason, right, you decide not to have windows in your room. Okay, we're talking about daylight. In other words, you do a living room or your master bedroom has got no window. So what you need to do is you got to go out shopping for a light tube. So a lot of these inventions out there is you have to be critical as an architect. You say, why is it that we need light tubes? Why is it there a building that has no windows? Why do you even want to build a room without windows? So this is the sort of anxiety that a lot of cities suffer from, architects who have no sense of why we need daylight. Daylight is like number one thing that we have free of charge, and we're not using it properly. So you get all these inventions. People like say, oh, come and buy some light tube. It's very good for your building. In the first place, why do you need light tubes? A light tube gives you something like 20 lux, inside your room, because you forgot to put the windows, or you just cannot have windows, which I fail to understand. But the sun is about 20,000 lux. All you need to do is punch a hole in your wall, and you've got something like 20,000 light tubes free of charge. Okay, next one. So that's the psyche of a city. And then we talk about nature. It's very important not to have anything between you and nature. So don't get in the way with, like, when you want to deal with nature, you have to take a walk in the forest or spend half a day on the beach, or just stand on top of your roof, or stand out in front of your balcony and just contemplate on nature. So this is something that we also have to do once in a while, because don't forget that we are in a generation where our devices separate us from nature. So I thought I'd share you with this slide that it's very important once in a while to kind of detox and just stand out there and say, oh my God, I got these three things called rainfall, sunshine, and fresh air. How many people actually know that they have this? So this is something that we need to come to realization. Next one. And then my favorite picture that everybody knows me, say, oh my God, this guy is showing this picture again. One fine day, the artist who actually has this copyright is going to come after me. Okay, this is a picture of people going around children's games at Peter Bruegel. I think this is where cities should have stopped. You know, this is like, I love the idea, my idea of a city is that it stops there. You know, this is as far as we would go with architecture, like, you know, and then I think how much, why would you want anything other than this? You know, isn't that enough? You can do whatever. You can beat your friends up, you can kick his face, and you can throw a ball into someone's window and break it. You can, like, you know, chase after a dog, or you can throw a pail of water over someone's head. You know, you got enough fun, isn't it? I mean, like, what else do we need a city to do for us? You know, so this picture, like, I can tell a lot of different stories. But when I look at something like that, I said, you know, there are cities like that right now. You know, like 500 years on, right? Unfortunately, none of you guys can travel to Europe, but there are a lot of cities, not necessarily Europe, maybe like some parts of Indonesia or some parts of the Philippines or Laos, right? There are cities that have been frozen in time, you know, and those are great cities, because you ask yourself, like, why is it that you want to go any further than this, you know? It's just a question I throw at you guys, and you have to think about it. Okay, next slide. This is Frank Lloyd Wright using daylight, you know. Next one. Okay, Gordon Pass is very important to me because I'm sharing with you guys a personal journey. You know, this guy actually taught me cybernetics, and he said something like, you know, you know, we have to allow ourselves to have a lot of conversation. Like, you know, he reinforces the idea that there's no right and wrong, and people should continue to talk and converse, because his main theory that your takeaway today is, maybe you can Google Gordon Pass. His theory is conversational theory. Look at some of the things that he proposes. What I learned from him is that you need to have a lot of conversations, like, you know, and conversations with a machine does not produce any intelligence. The only way that you can create intelligence is having conversation with your friend, or your mom, or your brother-in-law, you know, or even with someone you dislike, you know. Because his theory is that when you have a conversation with another person other than yourself, you create this thing called intelligence. Okay, next one. Okay, when I say framework, I'm talking about language. You know, the thing that I'm doing now, right? I'm using two things that I talk to you. One is I use my own voice, and I'm speaking to you in English. So that format is called a structural framework, in which I can then have a conversation with you. But when you look at the years that have gone by, right, we notice that the language that we are using now is called 1010 binary. You know, maybe you guys to Google. Binary is very interesting, because binary is like after the punch card. You know, the way we communicate with each other has been so simplified and so much more advanced that now we only have two characters. You know, is 1 and O. You know, like they call on and off. You know, and on and off is actually pulsation, and pulsation is what I'm doing now. The tone of my voice and how I pronounce something, and over the internet, right? I'm using frequency to share my ideas with you. You know, so it's something that for you to think about. Very important. Therefore, it puts you into perspective. Like, you understand what drawings are about. When you make physical model, when you do your video presentation, you rely on this so-called systematic framework, which is one is language and images, you know, and words, and they're very important for you to grasp and understand. You know. And then from there, you can go into like culture, you can go into different language systems, you can understand the internet, you know, they talk about machine learning and all this, right? You begin to get a very good understanding of how culture actually develops. Next one. I think connectedness is something to do with vibration, and the law of vibration that I know is that whatever you do in a city, right, it will impact something else, like a magnet. You know, every building, as you know, if you talk about materiality, for those of you who study material science, you will know such things like density, or you can learn something called porosity, transparency, like glass. Certain glass is opaque, certain glass is transparent, certain things are solid, and certain things are watertight, certain things are dense, certain things are so we can agree between you and me, right? We can all agree that architecture is made of materials that have different vibrations, and you will have to if there's a glass building next to your house, and then on your left you have a clay building, right? The vibrations that you sense from these two buildings are different. So as long as we understand that we are connected, right? It is like a wave, everything has a wave effect. So some of you may feel like you feel very like jittery in certain buildings, and sometimes you feel very good about a particular cafe, your favorite cafe. It's because of vibration. It's because of the way that the materials connect to your own vibration as a human being. So this is something that I'd like you to think about. And I just showed a comparison about the smallness of things and the bigness of things. At different scales, the idea of connectedness happens at many, many scales, from the atomic level and all the way to the city of New York. It is for you to just reflect upon. So it's very interesting for you to see some parallels in connectedness in terms of what I'm talking about. Yeah, thank you. Yusra? Yeah. Okay, I need to hurry up a little bit. So boundaries is like, there are two ways that you can look at boundaries. We have edges and threshold. A lot of you who are doing pavilions right now, for those of you who are in the lower semesters, right, you're doing a pavilion. It's very strange that most of you have been talking to me when you design a pavilion. You talk to me in terms of like what's inside your plan. 2.5 meters by 5 meters. What you're designing, like your brain is like the left side. So you design a pavilion and then you don't care what's outside, and then another guy does another pavilion, and then you go home without talking to each other. So your brain works like the left side. But what we should be doing is like on the right hand side. Your brain should look like, you need to talk about connectedness and boundaries to say that we have boundaries yet, but the boundaries are some kind more abstract. I think it's very important that you don't design things in. There's the thing called threshold, and then there's the junctions, and then there's impact. So I like you also think in terms of architecture, in terms of like, you can't be separate. You cannot design a building and then outside is a void. There's no such thing, because the whole planet is connected. Okay, next one. This drawing that I prepared in 1982 on the right hand side is my idea that a pigeon house is a revelation, that to say is a house, a building, like just like the Tower of Babel on the left side by the same artist, Bruegel. And you see that that sectional quality in the both drawings is to show that the inside and the outside are connected. And I think when we do buildings like that, we begin to kind of examine that the building never really have an inside and it doesn't really have an outside. It's all one whole. So I just love that. Maybe some of you need to do a drawing like, we always draw an elevation or a section, but why not draw an elevation and a section together and try to contemplate on the idea that there is no inside or outside, something like that. So these drawings show that idea of how do you project this understanding or wisdom of the fact that whatever you do, there's really no inside or outside. Actually, it's all one thing. Next one. This is revelation to say that one of my students from Taylor, Natalie, I don't know where she is now. Maybe she opened her own office already, but Natalie Chiang in 2019 was a master student, and she did this sketch which was very interesting. Not only is there an inside and outside, there's also the lower and upper, like the upper and the lower tier, so-called the ground below and the sky above kind of thing. So this is to say that students can actually produce very, very thought-provoking drawings. Not just me, like you guys can also do drawings like this. And Natalie was like, she wasn't really a star student, but she was among many people who were like playing around with drawings like this. And I think it's very important for us to explore our ideas in being more like the way that Natalie draws her project. Next slide, please. And then a very good example that you can look at connectedness and the whole idea of inside outside this is an actual city in India, designed by a guy who called Sri Aurobindo, who was he was a bit more utopian. I don't completely agree with his principles, but there was a sense that apparently that if you set up a proper community who were all in some kind of agreement, you can do quite amazing things with your city. Next slide, please. The next slide, please. Okay, so this idea of being civilized is something that we need to ask ourselves. What does it mean to be civilized? I think it would be a different platform to talk about civilization, but this lecture is supposed to tell you that being civilized is actually just a mindset. It's an illusion, like you think you're civilized if you live in New York, and then you are a caveman if you happen to have a house in Kota Kinabalu. It is an illusion. So be very careful about your understanding of what it means to be civilized. Actually, Alan Watts was another guy that I read quite a lot. He said that civilization is actually a mistake. Think about that statement. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, the other thing that I feel that in our cities that we define what people do is called, what's the term called taxonomy, which is a favorite among people who've got nothing better to do than to give labels to our designs, So I call it modern, postmodern, postmodern, pre-war, post-war, what do you call it, mid-century. These are labels, So it's very important that you read this philosophy by Gilles Deleuze, who was a French, either he's Swiss or he's French philosopher, who wrote a book called Difference and Repetition in 1968. What he said was that if you started to give labels to things, be very careful that the labels are not there to limit you to understand what they are. So I just want people to understand that when we give labels to a name, to a building, it doesn't make the building what it is. They are just words. If I call you pretty, that doesn't mean that you're really pretty. If I say you're short, it doesn't make you really short, because everything, when you read this book, you realize that units of measurement are illusions. If you don't understand, if you don't have a clock, right, you wouldn't understand what time really is. Our understanding of time has been limited by our invention called the clock. So this book is very interesting because it tells you that it's very dangerous to generalize and put categories and labels to our styles of architecture. Okay, next one. Okay, I can skip this one. Yeah, this is also we can skip, otherwise the lecture becomes too long. Okay, Toru talks about walking in the forest and giving up on civilization for a couple of weeks. He stayed out for, I think, I believe he was out for maybe 5 months or something. I can't recall. He got out of New York City and then he went into the forest, and he talked about how to be self-sustainable, and then he began to understand the nature of gardens and forests and civilization. So this is the book that everyone should read. In fact, all the master students in Taylor's are reading this. Just after you read it, right, you just throw it away. You don't have to don't make it your Bible or your whatever, your scripture. But I think he was a very powerful person that changed the way I look at architecture. And I think he even built his own little cabin, which is very interesting. And you can see that minimalism and he started this movement called together with a few other people called transcendentalism, which is to relate to nature, and to understand yourself from the perspective of you knowing that you are part of nature. Okay, next one. I don't know where I am. I think this is another good guy to read. Okay, we can skip this guy. I have to get to the end of towards the last part. Laurie Baker is someone that you should also look at. And a lot of the people that you see today in Malaysia who are parading as so-called organic architects or so-called the brick and mortar architects, right? Actually, it's not even Jeffrey Bauer. It goes further back. You will come to this guy called Laurie Baker. Yeah. Next slide, Isra. And Palasma is someone that everyone has it in their library. This is to understand that our sensory perception is very important, that we don't lose it. Now, for those of you who haven't held a pencil or haven't sharpened a pencil, and you haven't actually filled a bottle of ink, or you haven't, you better start doing that, because I recommend and highly recommend that you do this, because the sensory perception of architecture is an element that is totally necessary in order for you to design buildings. Yeah. This is something that you must have. And I don't want to over promote this book, because some of the things that Palasma said I am totally disagreeable, but he does make sense in terms of, he's saying that your skin and your eyes are the same thing. What you see and what you feel will actually manifest how you design your buildings. It's a very simple book. You can read it in like one afternoon and you can throw it away. Next one. Yeah. Next slide. I want to open up to discussion, actually. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, this is a very important thing that I discovered, right? To say that the reason why carpenters and people who collect rubbish, and sometimes you step out of your house, you see DBKL collecting your refuse and all that. The reason why we don't understand our cities is because we have been divided by class. If you are a laborer, you don't go to university, then you are one class. If I drive a Mercedes and my parents graduate from Harvard, then I'm another class. And why that has happened? Because we develop and we civilize wrongly. The original idea was the people who are interested in, let's say, spirituality, or people who are interested in naturalist science, right? They will gather together so that an apprenticeship system can be set up. So, for example, if you're interested in banking, right, you're supposed to like stay in a particular part of the city so that you can go to school and you can get the right teachers. So the quadrants were set up in order to aid learning and cooperation. But what has happened is we have lived in such a way that, people in Bangsa don't want to talk to people in Bangsa Maju. And then people in Puchong Dalam don't want to talk to people in Mont Kiara, right? So this division of labor has become division of wealth or division of status, which is artificial. So that's why Alan Watts says civilization. So your cities, right, have become more like the one on the right hand side, But actually, cities should have been like the one on the left. So cities allow us to gather together, so we can run like studios, workshops, together, so that you don't have to travel. Like if you want to learn how to make kites, then you just have to walk to my studio. So that was the original intention, but now it has become that. That's why Alan Watts said civilization is a flaw, it's a mistake. But I think we can bring our cities back to how it was before, and that's why town planning is a very important element in building cities. Next one. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. Next slide. Tea ceremony. Yeah. So why are we running so fast? Yusra? Yeah. What time is it? It's 5:15. Okay, so tea ceremony is about slowing down. And then next slide.
Where do you want actually? Because maybe there's some lagging between the two of us.
Oh,
next
okay.
Slide, artifact.
Yeah. Artifact. Also next slide.
Okay, artifact.
Okay, this is important. This is something that I have been sharing with you before about signages and like why is it that one city can do the one on the right, and then why the other city is doing the one on the left. Like, so I leave it for you to think about. I have no comments, other than to say that a lot of people say, it's very smart to, even people like, your so-called award-winning architect, right, might say, who is it? I can name him. What was the name of that very good-looking Bjarne Ingels? He himself has said that, let's do some clever things under our aqueduct, and let's do some clever things underneath our road bridge. Trying to be smart and clever and say, oh, we are sustainable. Actually, that's not true. I disagree. I think artifacts like aqueducts and road bridges should be left alone, like the picture on the right hand side, like somebody will with itchy hands will build an arch and then put a portrait and draw some mural or put some wayang kulit show, and then they can't leave things alone. This is what I mean by clutter. Clutter is a bit like the exercise of like you don't really appreciate things the way they have been. All these so-called itchy hands. What in Bahasa they call it gatal. It's like you add this, you add that, take this away, modify this. You just can't leave things alone. It's a disease. It's a habit that I might say maybe we Asians tend to have. I mean, again, I'm generalizing here, and I will go against my own will. I told you that Giles Deleuze says that be careful about labeling people. So I'm not labeling anyone, but you look at the guys on the left and the guys on the right. They have a different idea of infrastructure. I think one of the problems that we have in our cities is clutter. We've got too much clutter. Next one. You saw one slide. Lagging, still lagging. This is something for you just to look at the difference between like what people do for infrastructure. It's very interesting. A lot of people say infrastructure is the TNB substation, indoor water, septic tank. That's infrastructure, but those can be beautiful. All those things that you're looking at now is actually infrastructure. A lot of it is actually very utilitarian, like a TV aerial or radio station, or I think they can be very nice. So one of the things that we can do to make our cities great again, right, is to look at infrastructure. Next one. Yeah, next one. Next one. I think, am I coming to the end of the slide already? Am I like 5 slides away? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so then I think our consciousness has to do with like looking at our cities and to free ourselves from the burden of capitalism and tourism and overconsumption. And like doing things blindly, like they call it the blind alley. Like it's like it's like I give you a bucket of paint, and then you just like Jackson Pollock, you just pour it wherever you want, and you hope for the best that it looks great. So I think this is something that is happening to our cities, and that awakening moment is now. Now is like I'm asking you guys to like just think about all the stuff I've been telling you, and maybe that awakening will help you to make the city that you want. That's why I call it the conscious city. It's like the conscious city is not the city being conscious. The conscious city is the conscious city's inhabitants, which is you and me, us. Next one. Yeah, next one. Next one. Yes, there's a bit of lagging. Yeah, next one. I think is that the very last slide? Yeah, and
last
then this
talk
about. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, some more. I think we're still far away from the end.
Balad.
Balad talks about disasters that are ahead, and don't worry about it. I know that most of you, we got like Balad and a lot of people. Norman Foster said that he agrees with Balad that in 50 years from today, 50% of all the cities that we have today, let's say there are 500, right? 50% of them will be below water because he's saying that a bit like Balad, right? Our cities will start to drown, and we have to start to be a bit more positive about how to deal with natural disasters or natural phenomena. I won't call them disasters. It is all natural phenomena anyway, so we don't need to be like so anxious about it. But you just come to the realization that some of these novels actually point out to the truth that's happening in our environment today. So books that you guys can be reading. Next one. Next one.
Again.
Yeah.
Petals of Nature.
Yeah. This one is mind maps for you guys to play around with. Just write down what you feel about Kuala Lumpur. Just write down and start thinking and have a conversation with people and your friends. Next one. This is like my second last slide. I know this slide. Okay, so basically whatever you do, whether you're reading, watching a movie, or you're playing basketball with your friends, or you're playing chess, with your mother-in-law or something, right? What Jerome's saying is that in everything that we do, there's a sense of beauty in it. And Jerome says, as a mathematician, right, he writes a lot of computer programs. And he says, in a physical world, okay, you have beautiful towns and cities, But even as a programmer, he sees the beauty in the way that you write the script for a computer. For those of you who've done like word processing, or you've done like you've written like program for computer, you know what you call that, the what you call those programs, algorithms, and you work with math, right? You know that sometimes these programs in themselves, the formulas are quite beautiful and structured. They have proportions and they have logic, you know. So I think as an architect, you have to remember that beauty is everywhere, not just in buildings. There's the way that you write a letter, the phone call that you make, you know, the way you wrap up your puzzle, and how you deliver a message, or how you talk on the phone, you know, how you address someone. So Jerome Schering is one mathematician who proves that beauty is everywhere. In order that you can enjoy this software that we are using right now, right? Someone has written a very beautiful program somewhere, and he proves that if you take out the program, right, and you look at the way it's written, right, you will see a certain structure that is actually quite beautiful. That's what he's trying to prove here. Okay, next one. And then finally, my favorite slide, and I think again this lady will one day sue me because I've been using this quite a lot. I'm saying that when you look to the left and the right, basically we are part of nature, and there's no denying it. A lot of people, when they do biophilia and they go and study and they do research on biophilia, they are researching like insects, and then they research butterflies, and they look at rivers, and then they analyze leaves. You know, wow, they haven't analyzed it themselves, because you always forget that you are nature. You know, everyone said, oh, we should introduce nature into our buildings. You know, but we have been doing that from day one. You know, if we are not nature, then what are we? You know, are we robots? Or, you know, we have always been biophilic. The answer is we have to understand that we are part of nature. That is something that all architects forget, that our buildings are always natural. You know, we've always been, all our buildings are biophilic from day one, because without people inside the buildings, what are they? They are like, you know, infrastructure. Even infrastructure got people walking up and down with a screwdriver, right, trying to fix a broken tap or something like that. You know, so this is my last slide, I think, Yusra.
Okay.
I just want to.
I
hope like,
two more.
This one is about. I don't know what this is about. It's about. I think I forgot what I want to say about this. But basically, from the very beginning, we have a relationship with nature, you know. It's, you know, from. I think the idea for showing this slide is to say that many depiction of who we are, right, goes back so many, you know, years ago. But today, because of our devices, we forget that we are part of nature. Yeah, I think that was the whole premise for this image. Next one. Yusra? Yeah, these are small references. Yeah. So thank you very much for being very patient with my presentation. So maybe we should open up to the floor, and maybe I'll stay quiet a little bit because I got a bit of a sore throat. Yusra, maybe you can do some what do you call it? Management.
Yeah.
You can take over. I got a bit.
Sorry about that. Hello?
You can open the forum to the floor. Some people have started raising hands. I wonder what questions they have. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for for that, for the sharing. Yeah. Anyways, there were a lot of you know, kind of references made to, you know, different philosophers, architects, you know, so you know, if you do have time, I mean, do look up on them. I mean, like, you probably don't have time to read everything about all of them, you know, like Palasma, or, you know, Gordon Park, you know, all that. But at least, you know, do look up on really kind of like what's their philosophy or manifesto, and, you know, perhaps they could be.
But what Yong said to me the other day, which I learned quite interesting. He said that you may not have to read an entire book to gain wisdom. It could be a piece of writing you read in the New York Times or Newsweek magazine, you know. And I picked up a lot. Like, for example, there was a guy called Barry Lopez, who was an amazing biologist, and his obituary is very good to read, because his obituary talks about our affinity to landscape, and how to perceive landscape. It's much the same way like how the idea of continuum comes about from the writings of a lot of the landscape gurus the American landscape gurus. And it's amazing that you can just land on this kind of article. You read it once and it sticks into your head. The work of Barry Lopez is amazing. I mean, he's someone that we should really read into his work. It's amazing what he does for the environment. And it's something that I picked up reading the obituary in the Economist magazine. And I think Yong is right that yes, it's good to try and read the classics like read Plato's work or Immanuel Kant, who wrote about beauty, but it's a mouthful and it's difficult to. But it could also be an article somewhere which brings meaning to you. Like for example, Amanda, what's her name again? Amanda Gorman. Is that her name? What's her name? The lady who read the American, Gorban. Is that what's the name? Gorban. Amanda Gorban. Yeah, she wrote a poem in Biden's inauguration. It was very powerful. It teaches us about who we are actually. Yeah, so reading is great, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like what I meant by reading, like you don't have to pick up the book and read the whole thing. What I meant was, you can read a bit of an introduction or read a bit of an abstract, just to have a feel, what's out there, and then, with whatever that you are kind of inclined to, then you read further on, because I remembered last time, what's his name, the late Mark Cousins, yeah. I met one of my tutors then. I had to write an essay, and he was like, you don't have to know a lot of things, but if you have interest in something, or if you have an interest in a particular topic, then you just have to know that particular topic really well. So you read more on him, or read more on on everything that is that evolves around that particular topic. Yeah, I mean, so that's what I mean. You touch and go, you touch base on a lot of things. So just to be kind of aware what's out there. So I think that's kind of what's showing today. I feel, I think there were a lot of references with which I think 3/4 I have not read. So it's also a reminder to me. I mean, yeah, I should look up and just to get to know what these people kind of are into or talking about, that may be inclined to kind of what I'm currently doing, and one day I might pick up and learn something new. Yeah, I think it's important to. I think it's important to kind of scan through kind of what's there. And have a kind of deeper reading or deeper connection to these writers or thinkers or theorists, or doesn't have to be philosophers. I mean, like it could be an artist or an architect. It really depends. Yeah.
The 4 or 5 people that I can. What's the word? I'm quite consistent when I haven't added any new person to the list. I've been very consistent when for years and years on end, people always ask me, who are the people that you look up to in terms of inspiration, right? And I always name exactly 5 people, and they have never changed over the last 30 years, And it is Christo, it is Donald Judd, it is Carl Andre. It would be maybe I used to add a guy called what's his name? I used to look up Richard Long, but I've taken him off my list now. He's a landscape. Yeah, Richard Long.
The landscape.
Yeah, so I put Richard Dickens sometimes. I also taken off my list. The reason why I put these people down, because they have constantly been people that I go back to over and over and over and over again. I go back to their work and philosophy, and they're not architects. These are like they're artists, and you see these artists, they can understand architecture. They know where you come from. They understand materiality. They understand precision, color, proportion. What else, you know? So Christo, Carl Andre, Donald Judd, and then a couple of other guys, you know. And I think this is sometimes that you use it as your, what's the word? Yusra, it's like your barometer, you know. Every time you do a piece of work and you put yourself against their standards, and you say, am I doing it right? Have I proportioned my building according to these principles? And everyone can pick their own barometers and their own yardstick, you know. And I think it's good to have a couple of yardsticks around you in the back of your pocket, you know, in your back pocket, and you just take it out and say, okay, this is my reference. Am I doing something close or not, you know? So, but the other thing you need to do is also that understand is that a lot of the reference I pick is like from my own career, my own environment. Of course, everyone has a different environment. You know, there are remote books and which comes out of nowhere that I would have never come across because it is not in my path, you know. So it's interesting to see people throw ideas at me as well, and I do that as well. I kind of like converse with people who are coming from different spheres. Like you remember Ray Lagenbach, who's actually he's actually a theatre designer, and he designs the program for Singapore's School of Arts, you know, and he throws different books at me, you know, like for example, Fernando Pessoa, who is a very nice, a very good poet from Portugal, and his work is very powerful, you know. So you can come across little things like that. We should. I think architects fail to understand, and this is something I like to share with everyone here. We fail to understand that it is not wrong to step out of architecture to look at inspiration and references outside of architecture. You know, there's no reason why an architect has to look at another architect to be inspired. You know, we should look at science. We should look at biology. We should look at art. We should look at music, literature, philosophy, anything. You know.
I mean, like even all the architects. I mean, the known ones, whatever they write, it's based on, you know, other philosophers' work. I mean, like for instance, like last week, introduced you to, like, let's say Rem Koolhaas's Delirious New York, right? The culture of congestion. I think it's very much in tune with Jean Baudrillard's, you know, simulacra and simulation. You know, it's very much on that postmodern culture theory. So, you know, I mean, I don't know. I feel, you know, most architects' theory or approach, you know, has influence with usually not other architects, but usually philosophies or philosophers or you know, as you said, artists. You know, I don't know. I mean, that's my take. I think, yeah. Even Shumi as well, you know, it's probably on Derrida, you know, on Derrida's writing, Jacques Derrida. And these are all, you know, even you mentioned Gilles Deleuze, I'm not sure how to pronounce here, Deleuze. I mean, yes, a lot of architects, you know, kind of, I would say, influenced by their philosophies or their writings. So it's, I think it opens up the way we think, the way we perceive architecture or approach architecture, or see the world. You know, it could be environmentalists, as you mentioned again, the younger Etta. You know, we look at what she's done, and you know, perhaps that may influence the way we practice architecture too. You know. So I think it's a world of, you know, kind of possibilities. You know, we really need to open ourselves up, you know, and not just cocooned with, you know, kind of what's going on just in architecture or built environment. We can look at, you know, maybe astronomy or things like that. I don't know. I mean, like, I think it's very open, yeah, I think, you know, the world is vast, the knowledge is vast, and there's a lot you can do with it. You know, it's just how you kind of narrow down. I think it's not narrow down. I think it's how you frame. You know, it's kind of how you frame your view, how you frame your thoughts and perceptions on, you know, on your practice or on how you practice architecture, and that does not depend on just architectural practice or architectural work, because it involves a lot of things. You know, there's culture, you know, there's language involved. You know, as I think what showed earlier as well. You know, how we start with language. You know, the sign as a sign, where the sign is the signifier, signifies meaning. When you showed earlier the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and you know, the Urdu's writing and all that. Yeah. So yeah, I think, I don't know, that's what I kind of gather from what you shared with us today. Yeah. So anyways, anyone from the floor who would like to, you know, kind of ask us anything? Akif, you're here. Wow, thank you for joining us. Please.
Who is joining us?
Akif. Akif
Sorry.
was our student last semester.
Sorry if I'm intruding. I'm quite interested in this. I just wanted to ask a few questions, if that's fine.
Yes, please.
All right. Sir, you talked about your view on overdevelopment, right? Earlier. So I just want to ask, what do you call for overdevelopment, right? Can you like help me explain better? How is it? Is it necessarily a bad thing, or like I mean, if you read on like Rem Koolhaas, whatever happened to urbanism and everything, he explained that what do you call progress and moving on, like it's a drug, it's a potent drug for humans. So for architects, so what is the limits to overdevelopment?
I think that's a question that doesn't need an answer. You know, the reason for people say over, when you say you overdevelop, there has to be a mark, isn't it? There has to be a line that says beyond 30 stories. It's like to answer your question, right? Akif, it's like this. When do you say a building is tall? Is it after 100 meters or 12 stories, or is it after 500 meters, or is it after 30 feet? When is the building tall and when is it short? Okay, so you need a line where everybody agrees is when the building starts. That means let's say, can I give you this argument, right?
Yeah.
Take a building which is like say 12 stories, right? In other words, once it's 13 floors, if I put one more floor, it becomes a tall building. If I take one floor out, it becomes a short building. Is that such a thing?
No.
Okay, so overdevelopment is a little bit like that. It's an illusion. We have an illusion that one city is overdeveloped and the other city is underdeveloped. We don't know where that line is, you know. So the only over and underdevelopment is the perception that we have in our brain to understand that I can be in New York and I don't feel overdeveloped. I can stay in a kampong somewhere and I feel congested and anxious because there's something in the city that tells me that something is not right. So to me, overdevelopment is when you distress the inhabitants, where he cannot escape, he has no view, he need to buy a lot of light tubes for his study because he got no windows, you know. And that building could be in the beach somewhere, you know, with nobody, you know, the next neighbor is like 500 yards away. That's what I mean by anxious city. It's not about how many buildings you have and how tall the buildings are or how closely packed the buildings are. It's your well-being. You know, what matters is how do you know, what perception do you get about your environment. So I would say that a city is overdeveloped when there's greed involved, when you're doing something that you don't need, and you pass the distress on to the people who are your stakeholders. You know, I mean, there are some parts of New York which are excellent and great. And there's more. Actually, I can tell you, I'm very familiar with Berlin. I can tell you, Berlin is a fairly dense city, but they have some of the best. You can, you know, you take your bicycle and you cycle from your financial district, right? In less than 20 minutes, you're in the deep forest. You can see people bathing half naked in a river. So how do you get what kind of what do you mean by overdeveloped? You know,
Yeah.
I think Berlin is not overdeveloped, but it's denser than most cities in Asia. But what I'm saying is density is an illusion. It's to answer your question, I think you need to think in terms of what you get out of development. You get like a lot of windows, or you get a lot of daylight, or you can have buildings with a lot of windows, right, but no daylight. It's all tinted and it's all dark, and you put louvers everywhere. What's the point of that, right?
True.
So it's it's a question that I'm trying to answer in a very abstract way,
Yeah.
to avoid you to have a definition for like measurement, a unit of measurement. Like to say someone is wealthy is, yeah, there's no definition of wealth, there's no definition of poverty, there's no real definition of long, big, short, ugly, and all that. These are all labels, these are all like fences you put on an object, and you say, okay, this city is dense. So you immediately put a fence around it and say it's dense because it's got more than 300,000 inhabitants per acre, something like that. So these are all units of measurement which are very, very artificial.
I see.
Yeah.
For my next question is that you were comparing like Asian, what do you call it, particularly Asian cities with what do you call, with European cities for the cluttering of the cities with like ads and everything. So new cities tend to have more clutter than cities which are culturally older, sorry, seen in the olden parts of the city. But like in these parts of the city, it's a matter of what do you call it, conserving ornaments. And the capitalism in newly developed cities tend to get cluttered in new planned areas. Maybe since people are not familiar with it, or maybe they want to cover up cover blend facades. How do we change the mindset, especially in the digital age, to declutter our cities? It's like I was researching on the paving of Acropolis, basically by Piccionis. And a lot of his inspiration didn't actually come from the Acropolis itself, but rather from a philosopher called Ponti. So what he said was that architects back then basically were what do you call, even though they followed through with like functions and space and everything, they were more in tune with what do you call, something called Merleau-Ponty aesthetics, or something to do with more towards ornamentation and what do you call, aesthetics. So how do we change back our mindset to declutter what if these sore sites, what do you call, sore sites that we have today?
To me, the answer to that question is to do with results. It's results is something to do with like how much money you got left in your bank. So if you feel that the cities can put on blinking lights everywhere and put like a zoo and have a circus every 5 days, you have a circus running in the backyard somewhere, and then you start playing fireworks everywhere. You feel that is not taking up resources, you can go on doing it. But the cities which are nice and quiet, right, and very, very calm and almost kind of like absent of any advertising or signage, are cities that have awakened to themselves and say, we've had enough. We are, these are cities which are like kind of like in some form of humility to say, I'm on my knees now. I do not have any more energy, and I do not want to waste any more resources because I am depleted. Okay, Asian cities don't have that behavior or pattern because we think we have a unstoppable source of resources like water, sunshine. What else do we have? We have very cheap electricity.
Labor.
One fine day,
water.
we take things for granted. It's a bit like fresh air.
Yeah.
It's only when COVID strikes people will realize how much important it is to have a terrace or a balcony that you can just take a deep, short breath of air, in the morning, and you realize how precious that one gulp of fresh air means to you, right? To your chest. So it's to do with being resourceful. I think the cities which are quiet and responsible have a sense of humility, and they are on their knees and they beg nature to forgive them for all the clutter that they've ever had. These are cities that have grown to realize that every penny means something. That's why you'll never see a mayor in any European cities order to hack the head off like 200-year-old trees, the girth of which could be like 3.5 meters, But we have so many trees in Asian countries. We can go around with a hack and say, okay, that one on the left, take down now. Yeah, that one, yeah. This one, oh, yo, that one also, yeah, blocking my view, lah. This one, yeah, like that, you know.
All right.
So it's that sense of awkward, almost selfish act of treating nature as if it is disposable at the blink of an eye, kind of thing. You know, we remove. I showed Yusra the other day, or it wasn't Yusra, it was someone else in. University Kebangsaan in UKM, I think. I showed slides of 3 of our rainforests. The size of half the size of Singapore had been hacked by one individual, you know, because he's selling the timber to an American conglomerate, you know, for palace, for 2 palaces or personal investment, you know. You know, who owns this forest? Is you and I, right? I mean, I assume that you are Malaysian.
Yeah.
The forest belongs to you and me. Who do you think the forest belongs to?
To us.
You know, and it also belongs to Greta Thunberg, right? Remember our friend up in Norway somewhere, or wherever she is, Sweden or Switzerland or Denmark, you know. My ignorance, but yeah. Okay, because she, you know, we are all in one planet. I mean, whatever, when you hack something off your backyard, like, let's say that the 200-year-old tree behind your backyard, I give.
Yeah.
Let's say you hack that off, right? You're actually impacting the work of Greta Thunberg, you know, because we are in the same planet. We all breathe the same air. We all get the same sunlight. You mean there are several moons and several suns, is it?
No.
Okay, this is what we don't realize, you see. And that's why you got cities behaving in one way and cities behaving the other way. So my answer to your question is, how awakened are you and how responsible you feel about your own environment? You know, it's not about your environment. It's how you, okay, how do you feel about Greta Thunberg, for example? Do you think she's living in a different planet and she's got a different sun and she's got a different air, or she gets different water supply? I mean, when it rains, the water is different, the clouds are different. So why is it that one person can, like, you know, quit school, quit high school, give up her career, and risk her life, right? Anyone can just go there and, like, you know, some of these magnates, some of these conglomerates who owns like deforestation programs that can easily gun her down, right? Don't you think so?
Yes.
To shut her up. So why is it that one person can do that and then we are all here like with a hacksaw, like cutting like big trees everywhere? Why is it that we don't feel united and don't feel like we belong to this one project called Planet Earth? So the answer to the question is, a lot of the clutter in one city is the result of people consuming something at the expense of someone else. You know, so we have all these blinking lights and all that. I think we got to awaken one day. I know Las Vegas is fantastic, Hong Kong is wonderful. You know, what is that? The Macau is like, yeah. You know, let's have more of that. You know, but one fine day when you go into a place like Europe, right, you see like not a single soul there. They don't even want to pull a blade of grass, you know, from their lawn. And then you laugh at them and say, "Oh, you poor little fella," you know. Why are you so scared? You know, they don't even, like, you know, there was a joke somewhere. I read this alone again. There was a joke about, like, why do you think the Swedish boy walk in the middle of the road? You know.
Why?
It's because you want to avoid stepping on the weed on the side lane. That is the care that they have for the environment. So it's something that we need to learn.
So basically, just to be is based on the resource, and responsibility. Yeah. So
you remember the title? The title is ethics. Remember? Conscious city, and I put there something like placemaking and ethics. Yeah.
I only have 2 other questions, if that's fine, and then I'll be out of your hair.
No worries.
Right. You talked about palasma and the eye of the skin. So basically, I'm quite interested in asking for the second part, which is all about multisensory experiences, how specific time, specific manipulations of human senses basically creates atmosphere. As it's linked to Peter Zumthor's atmospheres and thinking about architecture also. Yeah. So how do we implement this kind of thinking into people, especially in new cities, like where like Kuala Lumpur, for instance, where everywhere we go, we feel like we are in a chaotic metropolis. Whereas if you there's a sample given by Peter Zumthor himself where he's in a palazzo where he's sitting down. He's sitting down with his family and he's just looking around. And he actually feels the atmosphere, the people, the noise, the air, how the light falls onto the columns and everything. How do we get that, that kind of thinking, to have people to think about multi-sensory experiences in basically our city?
Yeah, straightforward answer to that is you just grab the person by the shoulder and then you take him off the treadmill. Okay, I want you to like visualize this in your mind's eye, right?
Yeah.
Imagine someone on a treadmill looking at how fast he's running or how many steps he's done, right? In a gym, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're doing faster and faster and faster, right? Because you're building muscle, you're training, you're on a fitness regime, right? And then you run and run and run, and then after that you start to turn up the speed. And instead of walking, you're running now. You're running like on a treadmill, right? Okay, you need to take this person off the treadmill and put him beside the treadmill so that he's standing still, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we need to do to a lot of people in our cities, in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, wherever. Sometimes you just have to get off the treadmill a little while, just for a short while. Because when you're on a treadmill, you forget what standing still feels like, sometimes. It's called slowing down. And there's a lot of new philosophies now. It's called like slow foods and slow whatever, it's a phenomena that we need to slow down, because it's dangerous for us. And if you don't slow down, you can't see. It's like when you're driving in a car and I said, hey, Ajit, did you see that very nice chapel on your left? I said, no. Why is it? Because you're driving too fast, right? If you slow down a little bit, even slowing down is not good enough. You have to slow down, put the brakes on, step out of the car, turn around and look behind you, then you see the chapel. So we miss out on a lot of things in our cities because we're on a treadmill and we're driving too fast. So you ask me how to do it, right? You have to take on this thing of slowing down, and slowing down is not good enough. Someone, an artist taught me this. Yeah, you have to stop. Correct. Not just slowing down, actually stop.
My last question is on just now you said that traditionally that cities are divided, right? Especially based on proletariat. What was that?
Proletariat. The bourgeoisie,
aristocrats, peasants, and then alchemists, priests, merchants, and artisans. Basically, if our cities are have built up these kind of what do you call psychological walls, then they create a stigma and division. How do we plan to create unity and bridges between each other through city and urban planning within the conscious
by remodeling all our cities on the basis of a kampung? Yeah, you see, a kampung has like the head, the head man, and then or the penghulu lah. And then when you walk down 5 minutes away, you see someone baking a cake, and then to the left behind that you see a mechanic trying to fix a moped, or like and then 10 minutes down the road, there's a guy who's a cashier, he's a banker, for some reason he's got like American currency or he's got some Japanese yen, and then and then further down the road there's a clinic, an actual doctor is there, you can go and like, because you've got a fever on, and then you can consult him, So within the space of like 20 minutes walk, you have all the 4 quadrants there. You got the priest, the proletariat, the artisans, and the bourgeoisie, and the alchemists are all in one place, So I think the kampung life has got that very nice framework or modeling that we have forgotten. We have like, when we build cities, right? The town planner says to the left, then he put all the banks there. To the right, then he puts all the so-called the Indonesian workers there. And I said, in front of me, and then all the guys with Mercedes-Benz is on the north side of Bangsa. And I say, oh, behind me. Then people like you and me, we all end up in like condominium blocks, So this kind of planning is absurd and it's archaic, right? Because it doesn't develop that whole dynamics that a kampung has. A kampung has a dynamic that is a living, I call it a living museum, that people can move around in their own. You don't have to jump in a car, take a taxi, call a Grab here. Everything is Grab. We want to call Grab City, Everything is Grab. It's like Come on, like, you know, it's like we need to stand still and come alive. I want to like walk to my clinic, you know. I want to walk to a bookstore, you know. I don't want to, you know, grab everything, you know. Everything grab, you know.
So
So the
basically,
reason why, yeah, the town
Mhm.
planning exercise is very important. I think for your own interest, I think maybe you should look up some history in terms of how we set up planning schools, and who are the people who graduate from planning schools, and what do we do? What do they do after that? You know, what do they do when they graduate? You know, what kind of inverted commas communities are they building actually? You know, and you should question that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you think that these fellas read on Palasma and Christopher Alexander and Peter Zumthor and all that? You think so? When they go, you look into their reading list in town planning. They look at percentages only, right? Zoning and percentages, and then this building type, you know, this is type A. What is that? School, okay, typology, right? What do you call that? Definitions. You should give them a book to read called Giles Deleuze, you know, differentiation and what do you call that? The other book, you know.
Differentiation.
Giles Deleuze talks about the fact difference and difference. It's a book about labels and putting categories and generalizations.
Yeah. So I'll get it from Miss Yusra.
But I think all the questions that Akif was asking is all kind of driven by uh, the, I think, the ideology, you know, the capitalism. It's all due to that, consumerism and capitalism. I mean, like, you know, when the bourgeoisie, the peasants, you know, all these, you know, the gap is getting wider because of the capitalist system. You know, you look at the signages just now. By the way, Akif is from Malacca, so we can see Malacca exactly like that. You know, full of clutters. You know, it's again tourism and consumerism. You know, so you know, I think it's tough to kind of because we need, you know, we need everyone, people from the bottom, from the top, to kind of just not to say no, but to have a stand that there's a limit to all these, because it's detrimental, right, to the society.
Can I talk about that a little bit,
environment?
Yusra? Can I talk a little bit about what you're mentioning about consumerism actually comes from the idea of distortion of our taste buds. In other words, we've been titillated by consuming something that we don't really need. It's like the taste of water. Most people have forgotten the taste of water because you have been conditioned to believe that water is tasteless. You know. So I think consumerism comes from that act of not allowing you to reconcile with your actual desires in terms of like your pleasurable desires, right? Has been so that in cities, right, we all look for entertainment and we want to be thrilled. So you have fireworks, you have blinking lights, you have all this so-called clutter in order to make the city become what it really is. It's like a go faster line on a car. For those of you who are driving cars, right, you might want to put like go faster line and make it go faster. Maybe you know you maybe what you built is a car that can run only up to 70 kilometers, but you want to make it look like it's a Maserati, you know. So basically, our cities are like things that we built that needn't go faster, but we wanted to go faster because we've been conditioned to believe that any cities that can go faster will make us more civilized. So this is a bit like the loss of appreciation of water. You know, we can no longer believe that water is tasty, you know, because we have been conditioned to believe in other systems. You know, and that's what happened with consumerism. So when you go to a city and you visit a city, when you cannot buy a Daffy Duck, that means the city is lousy because the tourist industry is very low down. You cannot buy a Daffy Duck, or there's no like baby dolls to buy, or some fancy miniature or whatever you call it, you know, like a folding this and that, you know, to send to your friend, you know. So this idea of what makes the city great is really, really distorted. So I think that brings you back to the capitalism, consumerism, and not being aware of the city. You know, a city should just be left on its own. I think we human beings who are the conscious part of the city needs to be more awakened about what we desire, what is it that we need to appreciate more, you know.
Yeah. Basically, we cannot differentiate, or we cannot have a distinction between what is real, like what is really real, reality, then not fake, but because we've been constantly fed with the simulated world. Simulated world meaning, like let's say the advertisements, they tell you like, okay, you need to look like this, you need to eat this, or we've been constantly bombarded with images that kind of tweak your desires in a way, a tweak to kind of make you believe that this is what you need. So you can't differentiate that anymore. You can't differentiate what's real and what's been simulated, because the simulated or whatever that's been bombarded us is actually more real than the real thing. So it's quite scary actually. Yeah, but that's the world we live in now. Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Akif. Yeah. Glad to hear and see you again.
It's okay, Miss. I'm always here, Miss.
Janganlah. You have to graduate one day. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Anyone else? Any questions from? Nope. Okay. So I guess that's it. What for today?
Yeah. Just a disclaimer lah. I think my disclaimer would be that no right or wrong in this world. Like what I'm quoting Shakespeare again, there's no right or wrong. It's just people who make it so. So whatever I tell you, right, just take it with a pinch of salt, and then you can just bin the slides and then just go on and read whatever book you want and believe in whatever you want to believe, But I think there's no right and wrong. It's very important that no one must take this as carved in stone. There's no truth in here, I'm just sharing my own personal journey.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. All right, I shall end that.
So today, no homework, Yusra?
I don't think we have time, or unless if you want, we can give a quick one.
No. I was just thinking that I think our homework is just to, our takeaway is just to maybe think about our cities and find out whether our cities have got too much clutter. What can we do about it? Maybe that's the homework, the takeaway. And I'm happy to take on any other questions online or in the chat room. We don't have to.
Message? Yeah. If you want, you can write. What would be the most comfortable for them? I don't know.
Sir.
Yeah.
I'm so basically I have a few groups. We've got a group of friends of mine. We have questions for you later, not now, but because we're joining a competition for master planning, basically on how we can change our basically we're planning to change how borders are like these days, right? So we're planning to basically relates back to the stigma of walls and everything. Is it possible if I can convene with you more on this?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you my email. I'll drop you. Yusra has my email.
Yeah.
We can plug on email, then there's a record of our conversation, which would be quite good for you to track. Yeah, sure, no problem.
I'll pass it to him. Yeah.
Miss, I asked for tips from you also.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
All right, thank you.
I'll pass you his email. No worries.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Yeah, we did not get a single one from our student. none of our students asking. Akif is like from Sem 5 or Sem 6. Yeah.
Sometimes I tell people that when you stay quiet doesn't mean that you, because conversation takes two forms. One is the person talking, the other one is the person listening. If you have two persons talking, it's not a conversation. So I think these guys are behaving quite well. They're just listening. I think that's all right. But I would like to listen to some questions also. But I mean, if there's none, we can't help it. It's okay, lah.
Is this what do you think? Architecture, is it?
Say again.
Is this interior architecture?
No, this is a full-on architecture school.
Oh, theory.
Yeah.
Okay, all right then. Yeah, so we end then today. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening in and for being patient. And thank you, Agib, for your questions.